What if I told you that right now, as you listen to these words, there's enough energy flowing through your body to power a small city for an entire day? What if the very air around you contains more potential power than all the world's nuclear reactors combined? And what if this isn't science fiction, but scientific facts that's been quietly acknowledged by physicists for decades, yet somehow never makes it into mainstream conversation? Welcome back to another exploration where science meets wonder, where the impossible becomes inevitable, and where the deepest mysteries of our universe reveal themselves in the most unexpected ways. I'm your guide through these quiet revelations, and today we're going to uncover something that will fundamentally change how you see energy, power, and the very fabric of reality itself. But first, let me ask you something. When you think of energy, what comes to mind? Perhaps it's the electricity flowing through your walls, the gasoline in your car, or maybe the solar panels you've seen glittering on rooftops. We've been taught to think of energy as something we must extract, refine, and carefully ration, something scarce, something that requires massive infrastructure, enormous cost, and inevitable environmental compromise. What if that entire framework is not just incomplete, but fundamentally backwards? Take a moment to settle in, because what we're about to explore together will challenge some of the deepest assumptions about how our world actually works. And as we journey through this landscape of hidden possibilities, notice how your own relationship with energy begins to shift. Notice how questions you've never thought to ask begin to surface. Right now, you're sitting in what physicists call the quantum vacuum. Don't let the word vacuum fool you, though. This isn't empty space. According to quantum field theory, this apparent nothingness is actually seething with activity. Virtual particles are constantly popping into existence and annihilating each other in time frames so brief they make a nanosecond feel like an eternity. The energy density of this quantum vacuum is so staggeringly vast that a single cubic centimetre contains more energy than all the matter in the observable universe. That's not hyperbole. That's not a metaphor. That's what the mathematics of quantum mechanics tells us about the space between your fingers right now. Yet somehow, we've built an entire civilization around the idea that energy is scarce. Dr. Harold Puthoff, a physicist who spent decades studying these phenomena, once calculated that there's enough zero-point energy in the volume of a coffee cup to evaporate all the world's oceans. The implications of this are so profound that most of us simply can't process them. It's like discovering you've been living on the surface of an ocean of liquid gold while convinced you're in a desert. But here's where the history becomes more complex and surprising. In 1951, something remarkable happened. The United States government passed the Invention Secrecy Act, granting federal agencies the power to classify patents that might threaten national security or, and this is crucial, economic stability. As of 2010, there were 5,135 inventions under active secrecy orders. These aren't just weapons or military technologies. These include energy conversion systems. Let that sink in for a moment. Some patents have reportedly been classified for reasons including national security and economic considerations, according to historical records. Specifically, solar photovoltaic systems with efficiency ratings above 20% were subject to review and possible restriction. Energy conversion systems with efficiency ratings above 70 to 80% were automatically flagged for potential suppression. Think about what this means. In a world desperately seeking clean energy solutions, some researchers argue that technologies with unusually high efficiency have faced classification or limited dissemination, It's as if we discovered a cure for a disease, then locked it in a vault because too many people getting healthy might disrupt the medical industry. As you consider this, notice what emotions arise. Perhaps skepticism, perhaps anger, perhaps a kind of sad recognition that this somehow makes sense given what you know about how power structures tend to operate. To understand how we arrived at this strange situation, we need to travel back to the turn of the 20th century to a laboratory in Colorado Springs where a Serbian immigrant named Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments that would make modern physicists uncomfortable even today. Tesla had discovered something extraordinary. He found that the Earth itself could be used as a conductor, that electrical energy could be transmitted wirelessly through the ground and atmosphere with virtually no loss. In 1899, his experiments with what he called stationary waves suggested that unlimited electrical power could be transmitted anywhere on the planet without wires, without fuel, and without the massive infrastructure we now associate with power generation. His vision was breathtaking in its simplicity. Imagine a world where every device, every home, every factory could tap into a planetary electrical grid as easily as a radio receives signals from the air. No power lines, no coal plants, no oil rigs, just clean, unlimited energy drawn from the Earth's own electrical field. Tesla's financial backer, J.P. Morgan, initially supported these experiments. But when Tesla revealed the true scope of his vision, when he explained that his system wouldn't just transmit power, but would make it freely available to anyone with a simple receiving device, Morgan abruptly withdrew funding. The project was abandoned, the tower was demolished. The official story is that Tesla's wireless power transmission was scientifically unfeasible. But Tesla's own notes suggest he successfully transmitted power over considerable distances. Modern analysis of his work reveals that his understanding of the Earth's electrical properties was decades ahead of his time. So why did this revolutionary technology disappear? Tesla himself provided a clue in one of his later interviews. The present systems of power transmission are crude and wasteful, but they are profitable to those who control them. Fast forward to the 1990s to a small laboratory in Grove City, Ohio, where an inventor named Stanley Meyer was making claims that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Meyer said he had developed a process that could split water into hydrogen and oxygen using far less energy than conventional electrolysis required. His water fuel cell could supposedly power a car using nothing but ordinary tap water. The scientific community dismissed Meyer's claims as impossible. Water, they pointed out, is one of the most stable compounds in nature. You cannot extract more energy from it than you put in. This violates the conservation of energy, one of the most fundamental principles in all of physics. But here's what makes Meyer's story fascinating. He wasn't claiming to violate conservation of energy. He was claiming to tap into additional energy from the quantum vacuum itself. His process, he said, created a resonance condition that allowed the water molecules to absorb zero-point energy, making the splitting process energetically favourable. Whether or not Meyer's technology actually worked remains hotly debated, but what happened next is undisputed. In 1996, an Ohio court found Meyer guilty of fraud and ordered him to repay investors. 2 years later, he was dead. The official cause was a brain aneurysm, but Meyer's brother claims that his last words were, "They poisoned me." The circumstances of Meyer's death remain debated in some circles, with official reports citing a medical cause. We may never know, but his story illuminates something important about the intersection of revolutionary energy technology and powerful interests. Take a breath here And consider this. In a world where energy scarcity drives geopolitics, where control of oil and gas reserves determines the fate of nations, what would happen if someone actually developed technology that could make energy abundant and free? Maya wasn't the first inventor to claim access to unlimited energy, and he wouldn't be the last. In the 1930s, Dr. T. Henry Murray developed what he called a radiant energy device that allegedly produced 50,000 watts of electrical power with no conventional input. Witnesses, including electrical engineers and government officials, testified to seeing Murray's device power banks of light bulbs and electrical equipment in remote locations with no apparent energy source. Murray spent 17 years trying to get his device patented. When he finally received patent number 2,460,707 in 1940, something strange happened. The patent office suddenly began questioning the device's legitimacy. Murray's laboratory was broken into multiple times. His research materials were stolen. Murray reported multiple break-ins and threats, leading him to take personal security precautions. Like Tesla before him and Maya after him, Murray claimed his device was tapping into ambient cosmic energy, what we would now call the quantum vacuum. Unlike Maya, Murray's device was witnessed by multiple credible observers. Unlike Tesla, Murray actually received a patent for his technology. And yet, like both Tesla and Maya, Murray's revolutionary energy device never reached the public. The technology simply vanished, along with most of the documentation describing how it worked. Now you might be thinking, surely if these technologies actually worked, if unlimited energy is really possible, the scientific community would embrace them. After all, scientists want to solve the world's problems, don't they? Here's where we need to understand something crucial about how science actually works versus how we imagine it works. Science, particularly in areas that intersect with massive economic interests, is not the pure pursuit of truth we were taught to believe. Scientists are human beings with mortgages, career aspirations, and social pressures. They work within institutions that depend on funding from governments and corporations. They publish in journals controlled by editorial boards that have their own biases and blind spots. When Galileo proposed that the Earth orbits the Sun, he wasn't just challenging a scientific theory, he was threatening the entire worldview upon which religious and political power was based. The church didn't persecute him because his mathematics were wrong. They persecuted him because his mathematics were right, and that rightness was dangerous to their authority. Today, suggesting that unlimited clean energy is not only possible but has been demonstrated multiple times isn't just challenging a scientific theory. It's threatening the entire economic structure upon which our modern world is built. The implications are so vast, so disruptive to existing power arrangements that the natural human response is denial. But the physics is actually quite clear. The quantum vacuum contains unlimited energy. The question isn't whether this energy exists. The question is whether it can be extracted in a practical, controlled manner. And according to multiple inventors, across nearly a century of research, the answer appears to be yes. As you absorb these ideas, you might wonder, if energy suppression is real, what's happening now? Surely in our age of internet communication and global connectivity, revolutionary energy technologies couldn't be hidden the way they were in Tesla's time. You'd be surprised. In recent years, multiple inventors working on advanced hydrogen production, novel forms of nuclear fusion, and what they call over-unity devices have reported similar patterns of interference, funding mysteriously withdrawn at the last moment, research materials stolen or destroyed, key personnel suddenly unwilling to continue their work. One inventor I encountered during my research insisted on remaining anonymous, claiming that his revolutionary hydrogen production method had attracted unwanted attention from both government agencies and corporate interests. He described a pattern of escalating interference that began with patent applications being mysteriously delayed and escalated to what he believed were deliberate attempts to sabotage his research. Whether you believe these specific claims or not, they point to a larger pattern that's difficult to ignore. Revolutionary energy technologies seem to have a remarkably short lifespan in our world. They appear, generate excitement, attract attention, and then disappear. But here's what's fascinating. The technologies don't really disappear. The knowledge remains. The physics remains. The potential remains. What disappears is the economic and institutional support needed to bring these technologies to market. This suggests something profound about the nature of technological progress. We like to imagine that good ideas naturally rise to the surface, that useful innovations inevitably find their way into widespread use. But perhaps that's only true when those innovations don't threaten existing power structures. As we continue our exploration, notice how this realization might shift your understanding, not just of energy, but of innovation itself. What other revolutionary technologies might be waiting in the shadows, possibly sidelined, according to some analysts? Not due to technical flaws, but because they pose disruptive economic challenges. In our next segment, we'll explore the specific mechanisms by which energy technologies are allegedly suppressed, and examine the documented evidence for systematic interference with revolutionary research. We'll also investigate the philosophical implications of living in a world where abundance is possible, but scarcity is maintained by design. But before we continue, take a moment to consider your own relationship with energy. Notice how you use it, how you think about it, how you've been taught to conserve it, and ask yourself, what would change in your life, in your world, if energy were truly abundant and free? The answers to that question might be more transformative than any technology. As we continue our journey through the hidden landscape of energy, let's pause for a moment to consider something extraordinary happening right beneath our awareness. Your heart, beating steadily as you listen to these words, generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body. This isn't mystical speculation, it's measurable science. The HeartMath Institute has documented how this cardiac electromagnetic field is roughly 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain's electromagnetic field. But here's what's truly fascinating. This field doesn't exist in isolation. It's interacting with every other electromagnetic field around you. The fields generated by other living beings, by the Earth itself, by the vast cosmic web of electromagnetic activity that permeates all of space. You're not just a biological entity consuming energy. You're an electromagnetic being swimming in an ocean of electromagnetic interaction. This perspective fundamentally changes how we might think about energy itself. Rather than something we extract from external sources, energy becomes something we're already intimately connected to, something we're already participating in at every moment. In the early 1900s, while Tesla was experimenting with wireless power transmission, another group of researchers was discovering something equally profound about the nature of energy and matter. They found that every system, from atoms to galaxies, has what's called a resonant frequency, a specific vibration at which it naturally oscillates with maximum efficiency. When you strike a tuning fork, it doesn't just make sound, it demonstrates a fundamental principle of how energy moves through the universe. The fork vibrates at its resonant frequency, and if another tuning fork of the same frequency is nearby, it will begin to vibrate sympathetically, even though nothing physically connects them. Energy is transferred through space itself, through the medium of vibration. This principle of resonance appears to be central to many of the allegedly suppressed technologies we've been exploring. Tesla's wireless power transmission relied on finding the resonant frequency of the Earth itself. Maya's water fuel cell allegedly worked by finding the resonant frequency that could break the molecular bonds in water with minimal external energy input. Moray's radiant energy device was tuned to capture and amplify ambient electromagnetic vibrations. As you consider this, notice how the concept of resonance might apply to your own experience. When you enter a space that feels particularly peaceful or energizing, when you meet someone and feel an immediate sense of connection, when you encounter an idea that seems to vibrate with truth, perhaps you're experiencing forms of resonance that we don't yet fully understand. The implications of resonance-based energy extraction are staggering. If matter and energy are fundamentally vibrational, as quantum physics suggests, then finding the right frequencies might unlock energy potentials we've never imagined. It's like discovering that reality itself is a vast musical instrument, and we've only learned to play a few simple notes. Now let's examine how revolutionary energy technologies actually get suppressed in practice, because understanding this process reveals something crucial about the nature of innovation in our world. The first line of defense is academic ridicule. When an inventor claims to have developed a revolutionary energy device, the scientific establishment typically responds not with curiosity, but with immediate dismissal. The device is said to violate the laws of physics, the inventor is labelled a crank, and any serious researcher who shows interest risks their career and reputation. This happened to Dr. Eugene Malove, a respected MIT scientist who became interested in cold fusion research after the controversial Pons-Fleischmann experiments in 1989. Malove later died under tragic circumstances. Official investigations ruled it a random crime, though some researchers have speculated about other possibilities. The second mechanism is patent suppression. As we discussed earlier, the Invention Secrecy Act allows the government to classify patents that might disrupt economic stability. But there's a more subtle form of patent suppression at work. Revolutionary energy patents are often granted, then purchased by large corporations or government contractors, then shelved indefinitely. The technology becomes legally owned by entities with no intention of developing it. The third mechanism is what researchers call acquisition and burial. When a small company develops promising energy technology, it's often approached by larger corporations offering substantial sums to purchase the technology and all related patents. The inventors, often struggling financially after years of research and development, accept the offers. The technology then disappears into corporate research departments and is never heard from again. But perhaps the most effective suppression mechanism is economic. Revolutionary energy technologies threaten the fundamental business models of some of the world's largest and most powerful industries. The global energy market represents trillions of dollars in annual revenue. The infrastructure supporting this market, power plants, transmission lines, refineries, gas stations, represents trillions more in invested capital. From some analysts' perspectives, suppression of revolutionary energy technology can be seen less as conspiracy and more as economic self-interest. Why would an oil company fund research that would make oil obsolete? Why would a utility company support technology that would make centralized power generation unnecessary? As you reflect on these mechanisms, notice what assumptions you might hold about how innovation works in our society. We're taught that good ideas naturally rise to the surface, that market forces ensure the best technologies succeed. But perhaps that's only true when those technologies don't threaten existing power structures. Here's where our story takes a turn into territory that challenges not just our understanding of energy, but our understanding of reality itself. Many of the allegedly suppressed technologies we've discussed claim to tap into what physicists call the quantum vacuum or zero-point field. And recent developments in quantum physics suggest these claims might not be as impossible as they once seemed. In 1994, physicist Dr. Harold Puthoff published a paper in Physical Review showing that the quantum vacuum could theoretically be engineered to extract usable energy. His calculations suggested that the energy density of empty space is so vast that extracting even a tiny fraction of it could revolutionize human civilization. More recently, researchers at the University of Rochester demonstrated something called the dynamic Casimir effect, the conversion of virtual particles from the quantum vacuum into real photons under specific conditions. While the energy produced was minuscule, the experiment proved that energy extraction from the quantum vacuum is theoretically possible. The implications of this research are profound. If consciousness and quantum mechanics are connected in ways we don't yet understand, and there's growing evidence to suggest they might be, then technologies that interface with quantum vacuum energy might require not just the right hardware, but the right state of consciousness in the operator. This could explain why some revolutionary energy devices seem to work for their inventors, but fail when tested by skeptical scientists. It's not that the devices are fraudulent, it's that they're sensitive to subtle factors that conventional science doesn't measure or understand. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness itself might play a role in quantum measurement, and the collapse of probability waves into definite outcomes. While this remains highly speculative and lacks scientific consensus, it opens the possibility that energy extraction technologies might work differently depending on the mental state or intention of the person operating them. Take a moment to consider what this might mean if energy extraction from the quantum vacuum is not just a mechanical process, but involves some form of consciousness-matter interaction. Then developing these technologies might require not just technical expertise, but a deep understanding of consciousness itself. Despite decades of apparent suppression, research into revolutionary energy technologies hasn't stopped. It's simply gone underground, operating through informal networks of researchers, inventors, and enthusiasts who share information outside conventional academic and commercial channels. The internet has made this underground network more robust and more difficult to suppress. Researchers can now share detailed technical information instantaneously across the globe. Patents can be released into the public domain, making them impossible to bury through corporate acquisition. Video demonstrations can be distributed widely before any suppression efforts can be mounted. Organizations like the Institute for New Energy, the International Association for New Science, and dozens of smaller research groups continue to investigate revolutionary energy technologies. Their conferences and publications document hundreds of devices and approaches that claim to extract energy from unconventional sources. Some of these researchers report remarkable results. Dr. Randell Mills claims his hydrino technology can extract energy from hydrogen atoms by shrinking their electron orbits below what conventional physics considers possible. ECAT devices developed by Andrea Rossi allegedly produce excess heat through low-energy nuclear reactions. Brilliant Light Power, Mills Company, has attracted millions in investment funding and claims to be preparing for commercial production. Whether any of these technologies will ultimately prove viable remains to be seen. But their existence demonstrates that research into revolutionary energy extraction continues despite institutional resistance. As you absorb this information, consider how it might shift your relationship with authority and expertise. We're taught to trust established institutions, to believe that if something important were true, we would have heard about it through official channels. But perhaps the most important developments happen at the margins, pursued by individuals willing to risk ridicule and failure in pursuit of breakthrough discoveries. Here's where our exploration takes us into the deepest waters of mystery. Multiple inventors working on revolutionary energy technologies report that consciousness, mental state, intention, emotional coherence seems to play a role in how their devices perform. Supporters of this view argue that this goes beyond speculative ideas, citing experiments by Dr. William Tiller. Dr. William Tiller, Professor Emeritus at Stanford University, has spent decades researching what he calls psychoenergetics, the interaction between consciousness and physical systems. His experiments suggest that focused human intention can measurably affect the behavior of electronic devices and chemical reactions. The HeartMath Institute has documented how states of emotional coherence create measurable changes in the electromagnetic fields generated by the human heart. When multiple people achieve coherence simultaneously, their electromagnetic fields begin to synchronize, creating what researchers call collective coherence. Some speculative interpretations suggest that if consciousness and quantum mechanics are connected, then technologies that interface with quantum-level phenomena might be sensitive to the consciousness of their operators. A device designed to extract energy from the quantum vacuum might work differently depending on the mental state of the person using it. This could explain some of the inconsistent results reported with revolutionary energy devices. It might not be that the devices are fraudulent or that the inventors are deluded. It might be that the technologies are real, but they operate according to principles that conventional science doesn't yet understand. However, we must emphasize that this remains highly speculative territory. There is no scientific consensus that consciousness directly influences quantum events at macroscopic scales. The idea that mental states can affect the operation of energy devices lacks rigorous experimental verification. But the possibility is intriguing. If revolutionary energy technologies do require some form of consciousness-matter interaction, then developing them might require not just technical innovation, but a fundamental shift in how we understand the relationship between mind and matter. As you consider these ideas, notice what resonates with your own experience. Have you ever felt that your mental state affected how technology worked around you? Have you noticed that some devices seem to respond differently to different people? While these observations might have conventional explanations, they might also hint at subtler interactions that we don't yet understand. Let's step back for a moment and consider the bigger picture. What would our world actually look like if unlimited clean energy became available? The implications are so vast that they're almost impossible to fully grasp. Energy abundance would fundamentally transform human civilization. Desalination would make fresh water unlimited. Vertical farming could make food scarcity obsolete. Carbon capture could reverse climate change. Space travel could become as common as air travel is today. But the changes would go deeper than technology. When energy is scarce, societies organize around competition for resources. When energy is abundant, entirely different forms of social organization become possible. Consider how the internet changed human society, not just through improved communication, but by making information abundant rather than scarce. When anyone can access virtually unlimited information instantly and for free, traditional gatekeepers of knowledge lose their power. Educational institutions, media companies, and governments must adapt to a world where their primary currency, information, is no longer scarce. Energy abundance would create similar disruptions, but on a far larger scale. When energy costs approach zero, the economic basis of industrial society changes fundamentally. Manufacturing becomes extremely inexpensive. Transportation costs plummet. The geographical constraints that have shaped human civilization for millennia begin to dissolve. This level of disruption explains why revolutionary energy technologies might face resistance that goes beyond simple economic self-interest. We're not just talking about changing how we power our devices, we're talking about changing the fundamental structure of human society. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice what emotions arise. Excitement about the potential benefits, anxiety about the disruption, skepticism about whether such changes are really possible. Your reaction might reveal something important about your relationship with change itself. While we wait to see whether revolutionary energy technologies will emerge from the underground and transform our world, there's something equally important happening on a more personal level. You can begin to explore your own relationship with energy right now, in ways that don't require any external technology. Ancient wisdom traditions have long recognized that human beings are fundamentally energetic systems. Practices like yoga, qigong, and meditation are essentially technologies for optimizing personal energy flow. Modern research is beginning to validate what these traditions have taught for millennia, that consciousness and energy are intimately connected. When you practice coherent breathing, inhaling and exhaling in a smooth rhythmic pattern, you create measurable changes in your heart rate variability. This cardiac coherence affects your electromagnetic field, which in turn influences your mental clarity, emotional stability, and even your ability to make intuitive decisions. The implications are profound. If revolutionary energy technologies do require some form of consciousness-matter interaction, then developing your own energetic coherence might be preparation for participating in an energy-abundant future. But even if external energy technologies never materialize, optimizing your personal energy system can transform your experience of life right now. You become more resilient, more creative, more capable of navigating complexity with grace and wisdom. This suggests a different approach to the energy crisis, one that begins with personal transformation rather than technological innovation. Instead of waiting for someone else to develop revolutionary energy devices, you can begin developing revolutionary energy awareness within yourself. As we settle deeper into this exploration of hidden energies and suppressed technologies, let's examine something that might surprise you about how innovation actually moves through our world. You might imagine that revolutionary discoveries follow a predictable path from laboratory to marketplace, from patent office to mass production. But the reality is far more complex and far more intentional than most of us realize. There exists what researchers quietly call the innovation filter, a systematic process by which certain types of breakthrough technologies are identified, evaluated, and either promoted or buried based on criteria that have nothing to do with their scientific merit. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's documented business strategy, implemented through a network of institutions that most people never think to question. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, known as DARPA, maintains what they call the Biological Technologies Office. Part of their mandate involves monitoring emerging technologies that could disrupt existing defense capabilities or economic structures. When a technology is deemed potentially destabilizing, it doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it enters what insiders call managed development, a process where the technology's evolution is carefully controlled, its applications limited, and its public visibility minimized. Take a breath here and consider what this might mean for the revolutionary energy technologies we've been discussing. If a device could truly provide unlimited clean energy, it wouldn't just threaten oil companies or utility providers. It would fundamentally alter the balance of global power. Nations that control energy resources would lose their geopolitical leverage overnight. Military technologies based on fuel logistics would become obsolete. The entire economic framework that has shaped international relations for over a century would collapse. From this perspective, suppressing revolutionary energy technology isn't just about protecting corporate profits, it's about maintaining the stability of the entire global order. But let's dive deeper into the technical aspects of how these suppression mechanisms actually operate, because understanding this reveals something fascinating about the nature of the technologies themselves. Many of the suppressed energy devices we've discussed operate on principles of resonant frequency manipulation. Tesla's wireless power transmission, Meyer's water fuel cell, Moray's radiant energy device, they all claim to work by finding and amplifying specific frequencies that could extract energy from environmental sources. Here's what makes this particularly interesting. Frequency-based technologies are incredibly difficult to suppress completely because frequencies themselves cannot be patented or controlled. You can patent a device that generates a specific frequency, but you cannot own the frequency itself. This creates what intelligence analysts call a technological leak, a gap in the suppression system where information continues to flow despite official restrictions. As a result, knowledge about revolutionary frequencies tends to survive even when the devices themselves are suppressed. Research into what some call scalar wave technologies continues in universities and private laboratories around the world. Scientists studying everything from brain entrainment to plant growth enhancement have documented frequency combinations that produce effects that conventional physics struggles to explain. Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, working in the 1930s, claimed to have discovered specific frequencies that could selectively destroy pathogenic microorganisms without harming healthy tissue. His research was systematically discredited and his equipment destroyed, but the frequency data survived. Modern researchers working with similar principles report remarkable results in fields ranging from materials science to medical therapy. The pattern is consistent. The hardware gets suppressed, but the underlying frequency information persists, spreading through informal networks of researchers who continue to explore these phenomena outside conventional academic and commercial channels. Notice how this might apply to your own experience with frequency-based practices. When you listen to certain types of music, when you spend time in natural environments with specific acoustic properties, when you practice rhythmic breathing or chanting, you might be unconsciously accessing some of these same principles that revolutionary energy technologies attempt to harness mechanically. This brings us to perhaps the most intriguing aspect of suppressed energy technology research, the role that consciousness appears to play in how these devices function. Multiple inventors have reported that their energy extraction devices seem to work differently depending on the mental state of the operator. This observation has led to a fascinating branch of research that exists almost entirely outside mainstream scientific investigation. Dr. William Tiller's work at Stanford University documented how focused human intention could measurably affect the pH of water, the growth rate of plants, and the behavior of electronic devices. While these effects were small and difficult to replicate consistently, they suggested that consciousness might influence physical systems in ways that conventional science doesn't account for. Some interpretations suggest that if consciousness plays a role in quantum measurement, and there's ongoing scientific debate about this possibility, then technologies that interface with quantum-level phenomena might be sensitive to the consciousness of their operators. This could explain why some revolutionary energy devices seem to work for their inventors, but fail when tested by skeptical researchers. However, we must emphasize that this remains highly speculative territory. There is no scientific consensus that consciousness directly influences quantum events at macroscopic scales, and claims about mind-matter interaction require extraordinary evidence that hasn't yet been provided. But the possibility raises profound questions about the nature of technology itself. What if the most advanced technologies aren't purely mechanical systems, but hybrid consciousness-matter interfaces that require specific states of awareness to function properly? This could explain another puzzling aspect of energy suppression. Why some technologies seem to work perfectly in small-scale demonstrations, but fail when attempts are made to scale them up for mass production. Perhaps these technologies require not just the right hardware, but the right state of consciousness in the operator, a condition that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as systems become larger and more complex. Let's pause for a moment to consider the deeper economic implications of what we're discussing, because this reveals something crucial about why energy suppression might be not just profitable, but necessary for maintaining current social structures. Our entire economic system is based on the assumption of scarcity. Money itself derives its value from the fact that resources are limited and must be carefully allocated. Markets function through the interaction of supply and demand, with prices reflecting the relative scarcity of goods and services. But what happens to an economic system based on scarcity when a fundamental resource, energy, becomes abundant and essentially free? The implications cascade through every aspect of society. Manufacturing costs plummet when energy costs approach zero. Transportation becomes virtually free when vehicles can operate without fuel. Agriculture transforms when unlimited energy enables vertical farming and automated food production. The geographical constraints that have shaped human civilization for millennia begin to dissolve when energy abundance makes it economically viable to live and work anywhere. This level of transformation isn't just disruptive, it's potentially catastrophic for existing power structures. Entire industries would become obsolete overnight. Financial systems based on energy-backed currencies would collapse. Nations whose power derives from energy resources would find themselves irrelevant. From this perspective, suppressing revolutionary energy technologies isn't just about protecting corporate profits. It's about preventing the collapse of civilization as we know it. The question becomes, is gradual transformation possible, or would energy abundance inevitably lead to social chaos? Take a moment to consider your own relationship with this possibility. Does the prospect of unlimited clean energy excite you or make you anxious? Your reaction might reveal something important about how you relate to change itself, and whether you see transformation as opportunity or threat. As we continue our exploration, let's return to the quantum vacuum with a deeper understanding of why this concept is so central to revolutionary energy technology claims. The quantum vacuum isn't empty space, it's a seething ocean of virtual particles constantly popping into existence and annihilating each other in timeframes so brief they make a nanosecond feel like an eternity. The energy density of this quantum foam is so staggeringly vast that physicists have struggled to understand why it doesn't curve spacetime so severely that the universe collapses into itself. This is called the cosmological constant problem, and it represents one of the biggest mysteries in modern physics. But here's what's particularly relevant to our discussion. If the quantum vacuum contains unlimited energy, and if consciousness plays any role in quantum measurement and wave function collapse, then the combination of the right technology and the right state of consciousness might theoretically allow access to this infinite energy reservoir. This isn't just speculation. In 1994, physicist Dr. Harold Puthoff published peer-reviewed research showing that the quantum vacuum could theoretically be engineered to extract usable energy. His calculation suggested that the energy density of empty space is so vast that extracting even a tiny fraction of it could revolutionize human civilization. More recently, researchers have demonstrated the dynamic Casimir effect, the conversion of virtual particles from the quantum vacuum into real photons under specific conditions. While the energy produced was minuscule, the experiment proved that energy extraction from the quantum vacuum is theoretically possible. The question isn't whether the energy exists. The question is whether it can be extracted in a practical, controlled manner without requiring more energy input than is produced as output. As you contemplate these ideas, notice how they might shift your understanding of the space around you. The emptiness between your hands isn't actually empty. It's full of potential energy so vast it defies imagination. You're not sitting in a void. You're immersed in an ocean of infinite possibility. Despite decades of apparent suppression, research into revolutionary energy technologies hasn't stopped. It's simply moved underground, operating through networks of researchers, inventors, and enthusiasts who share information outside conventional academic and commercial channels. The internet has made this underground network more robust and more difficult to suppress than ever before. Organizations like the Institute for New Energy, the International Association for New Science, and dozens of smaller research groups continue to investigate revolutionary energy technologies. Their conferences and publications document hundreds of devices and approaches that claim to extract energy from unconventional sources. Some of these researchers report remarkable results. Dr. Randall Mills claims his hydrino technology can extract energy from hydrogen atoms by shrinking their electron orbits below what conventional physics considers possible. ECAT devices developed by Andrea Rossi allegedly produce excess heat through low-energy nuclear reactions that don't follow the patterns of conventional nuclear physics. Whether any of these technologies will ultimately prove viable remains to be seen. But their existence demonstrates that research into revolutionary energy extraction continues, despite institutional resistance and academic ridicule. What's particularly interesting is how this underground research network has evolved its own culture and methodology. Researchers share not just technical data, but also observations about the consciousness factors that seem to influence device performance. They've developed protocols for maintaining what they call coherent intention during experiments. They've created support networks for inventors who report experiencing suppression efforts. This underground renaissance suggests something profound about human creativity and determination. When official channels are blocked, alternative pathways emerge. When conventional institutions resist revolutionary ideas, parallel institutions develop to nurture them. As you consider this phenomenon, notice what it might suggest about your own relationship with innovation and discovery. Are you waiting for official approval before exploring revolutionary ideas? Or are you willing to investigate possibilities that exist outside mainstream acceptance? Let's delve deeper into the principle of resonance, because understanding this concept is crucial to grasping how many allegedly suppressed technologies allegedly work. Resonance isn't just a physical phenomenon, it's a fundamental organizing principle that appears to operate at every level of reality, from subatomic particles to galactic structures. When you strike a tuning fork, it doesn't just make sound. It demonstrates how energy can be transferred through space without any physical connection. The fork vibrates at its resonant frequency, and if another tuning fork of the same frequency is nearby, it will begin to vibrate sympathetically. Energy moves from one system to another through the medium of resonance. This principle appears in countless natural phenomena. Planets orbit stars in resonant relationships. Biological systems, from heartbeats to brain waves, operate through resonant cycles. Even the structure of atoms can be understood as standing wave patterns created by resonant interactions between particles and fields. Many allegedly suppressed technologies claim to work by identifying and amplifying natural resonant frequencies. Tesla's wireless power transmission allegedly found the resonant frequency of the Earth's electromagnetic field. Meyer's water fuel cell supposedly identified the resonant frequency that could break molecular bonds with minimal energy input. Morey's radiant energy device was tuned to capture and amplify ambient electromagnetic resonances. The implications of resonance-based energy extraction are staggering. If matter and energy are fundamentally vibrational, as quantum physics suggests, then finding the right frequencies might unlock energy potentials we've never imagined. It's like discovering that reality itself is a vast musical instrument, and we've only learned to play a few simple notes. Here's where it gets personally relevant. Your body is a resonant system. Your heart has a resonant frequency. Your brain waves operate in resonant cycles. Even your cells vibrate at specific frequencies that can be measured and influenced. When you practice coherent breathing, inhaling and exhaling in smooth rhythmic patterns, you're creating resonance between your heart rate, your brain waves, and your electromagnetic field. This isn't just relaxation, it's a form of biological frequency tuning that optimizes your entire system's energy efficiency. Ancient wisdom traditions seem to have understood these principles intuitively. Chanting, drumming, rhythmic movement, these practices all involve finding and amplifying beneficial resonant frequencies within human consciousness and physiology. Perhaps the allegedly suppressed technologies we've been discussing aren't as foreign to human experience as they initially seem. Perhaps they're mechanical attempts to harness the same resonant principles that conscious beings can access directly through awareness and intention. As our exploration continues, let's examine something that might fundamentally alter how you understand your relationship with energy itself. Modern physics recognizes that what we call particles aren't actually solid objects moving through empty space. They're excitations in quantum fields that permeate all of reality. The electron field exists everywhere in the universe. When this field becomes excited in a localized way, we observe what we call an electron particle. The same is true for photons, quarks, and every other fundamental component of matter and energy. Reality isn't made of things. It's made of field excitations, patterns of activity in an underlying quantum substrate. This field-based understanding of reality has profound implications for energy technology. If everything is already connected through quantum fields, then energy extraction might not require moving energy from one place to another. It might simply require learning to modulate field excitations in ways that concentrate energy where we want it to appear. Some interpretations of allegedly suppressed technologies suggest they work by creating what researchers call field effects, modifications to the local quantum field structure that allow energy to be extracted from the vacuum itself. These aren't perpetual motion machines that violate conservation of energy. They're field modulation devices that access energy that's already present in the quantum substrate. This perspective transforms how we might think about consciousness and energy. If consciousness is also a field phenomenon, and there's growing evidence to suggest it might be, then conscious intention might be able to influence quantum field excitations directly. Not through some mystical mind over matter mechanism, but through field interactions that we don't yet understand. However, we must emphasize that this remains highly speculative territory. While quantum field theory is well-established physics, the idea that consciousness can directly influence field excitations lacks scientific consensus and requires extraordinary evidence that hasn't yet been provided. But the possibility opens fascinating questions about the nature of human potential. What if developing your consciousness isn't just about personal growth, but about learning to interact more effectively with the quantum field substrate that underlies all reality? Here's something paradoxical about energy suppression that reveals a deeper truth about how innovation actually works in our world. The very act of suppressing a technology often ensures its eventual emergence, because suppression creates underground networks that are more resilient and creative than conventional development pathways. When Tesla's wireless power transmission was shut down by financial interests, the knowledge didn't disappear. It went underground, inspiring generations of researchers who continued developing the concepts outside official channels. When Meyer's water fuel cell research was discredited, it sparked a worldwide network of inventors exploring similar approaches. When Morey's radiant energy device vanished, the principles behind it continued to evolve through informal research communities. Suppression creates what systems theorists call pressure points, areas where natural development is blocked, causing innovation to find alternative pathways. These alternative pathways often prove more robust and creative than the original suppressed technologies. This suggests something profound about the relationship between resistance and innovation. Perhaps revolutionary technologies need to go underground to mature properly. Perhaps the pressure of suppression actually accelerates their development by forcing researchers to think more creatively and work more collaboratively. The internet has transformed this dynamic completely. Information about suppressed technologies can now be shared instantly across global networks. Patent data can be released into the public domain, making it impossible to bury through corporate acquisition. Video demonstrations can be distributed widely before any suppression efforts can be mounted. As you reflect on this paradox, consider how it might apply to other areas of life. When have you experienced situations where resistance to an idea or project actually made it stronger and more creative? When have constraints forced you to discover solutions you never would have found under easier circumstances? Some researchers describe a suppression paradox, suggesting that underground development may make revolutionary energy research more resilient and innovative. Thousands of researchers, inventors, and enthusiasts around the world are not just investigating revolutionary energy technologies. They're developing new ways of thinking about energy, consciousness, and reality itself. They're creating communities based on collaboration rather than competition, on open source sharing rather than proprietary control, on consciousness development alongside technological innovation. This network operates through principles that mirror the quantum field effects we've been discussing. Information flows through it in non-linear ways. Insights emerge simultaneously in multiple locations. Breakthroughs seem to arise from collective intelligence rather than individual genius. Perhaps this is the real revolution, not any specific energy technology, but the emergence of a new form of collective consciousness that's capable of developing solutions to humanity's greatest challenges. A consciousness network that operates through resonance rather than hierarchy, through field effects rather than mechanical force. As you've listened to these ideas, you've become part of this network. Every moment you've remained open to possibilities that challenge conventional thinking. Every instant you've held space for revolutionary concepts. You've contributed to a field of collective exploration that extends far beyond any individual understanding. This network effect might explain why revolutionary energy technologies seem to be emerging simultaneously from multiple sources around the world. It's not that individual inventors are independently discovering the same principles. It's that they're all tapping into the same field of collective consciousness that's focused on solving humanity's energy challenges. Take a moment to sense this connection. Notice how the ideas we've explored don't just exist in your individual mind, but seem to connect you with something larger. You're not just a passive observer of these concepts. You're an active participant in their evolution. Some speculative interpretations suggest that consciousness itself may represent the ultimate form of energy technology, though this remains unproven. This consciousness network is already shaping the future in ways that conventional analysis can't predict or control. It operates through field effects that transcend traditional boundaries between mind and matter, between individual and collective, between technology and consciousness. And you're part of it right now. Simply by engaging with these ideas, you're contributing to a transformation that extends far beyond energy technology into the very nature of human consciousness and its relationship with reality itself. As we prepare to explore even deeper mysteries in our next journey together, remember that the quantum decision you make in each moment, to remain curious rather than dismissive, to stay open rather than closed, to participate rather than merely observe, is already shaping not just your personal future, but the collective destiny of our species. The quantum decision that's already shaping your future operates through mechanisms that consciousness research is only beginning to understand, but that you can experience directly through the quality of attention you bring to each moment of your existence. As we move deeper into this landscape of hidden possibilities, let's explore something that might fundamentally change how you understand the very nature of breakthrough discoveries. There's a principle operating in the background of human innovation that researchers quietly call emergent synchronicity. the mysterious tendency for revolutionary ideas to surface simultaneously across multiple, unconnected minds when the conditions are right. When Tesla was experimenting with wireless power transmission in Colorado Springs, similar research was being conducted independently by Marconi in Italy and Popov in Russia. When Meyer was developing his water fuel cell in Ohio, inventors in Japan and Germany were exploring nearly identical approaches. This isn't coincidence. It's a pattern that appears consistently throughout the history of revolutionary technology. Some interpretations suggest this might reflect how consciousness and information flow through what we might metaphorically think of as an invisible field of collective intelligence. When humanity reaches a certain threshold of readiness for a particular discovery, that discovery seems to emerge simultaneously from multiple sources, as if the idea itself was waiting for the right moment to manifest. This remains a speculative concept, not a proven scientific fact, but it offers a fascinating lens through which to view the emergence of suppressed technologies. Perhaps these innovations aren't being developed by isolated inventors working in secret. Perhaps they're arising from a deeper field of human potential that's responding to our collective need for energy solutions. As you consider this possibility, notice how it might shift your relationship with your own creative insights. When you have an idea that feels like it came from somewhere beyond your individual thinking, when you experience what some call inspiration or intuition, you might be tapping into this same field of emergent possibility. Take a breath here and consider the implications. If revolutionary energy technologies are emerging simultaneously from multiple sources because humanity is ready for them, then suppression efforts might be fighting against a natural evolutionary process that will ultimately prove unstoppable. Let's delve into something that might explain why certain energy technologies seem to work for some people, but not others, and why the effects often appear to amplify when multiple researchers work together on similar projects. It's called the resonance cascade effect, and it reveals something profound about how consciousness and technology might interact in ways we don't yet fully understand. In physics, a cascade occurs when a small initial event triggers a series of larger events, each amplifying the next. Nuclear reactions work this way. Avalanches work this way. And some researchers suggest that consciousness technology interactions might work this way too. When Tesla conducted his experiments, he reported that his devices seemed to work better when he was in specific mental states, what he described as electrical harmony with his equipment. Modern inventors working with similar technologies report comparable experiences. The devices seem to respond not just to technical adjustments, but to the operator's state of mind, emotional coherence, and what some call energetic alignment. This is highly speculative territory, and there's no scientific consensus that consciousness directly influences technological systems. However, the reports are consistent enough across multiple researchers and decades of experimentation to suggest something interesting might be occurring. One interpretation is that these technologies might be sensitive to extremely subtle environmental factors, electromagnetic fields generated by the human nervous system, minute vibrations caused by breathing patterns, or even quantum-level fluctuations that correlate with mental states. Not because consciousness is magical, but because consciousness exists within physical systems that generate measurable effects. The resonance cascade concept suggests that when multiple people focus coherent attention on similar technological challenges, they might create conditions that amplify subtle effects that would be undetectable in isolation. Like tuning forks that begin to vibrate sympathetically when placed near each other, conscious beings working on related problems might create resonant fields that enhance the performance of sensitive technologies. This could explain why revolutionary energy technologies often seem to work during initial demonstrations but fail when subjected to skeptical scientific analysis. It's not that the inventors are fraudulent or that the technologies are imaginary. It's that they might require specific resonant conditions that are disrupted by hostile or purely analytical observation. As you reflect on this possibility, consider your own experience with technology. Have you noticed that some devices seem to work better for certain people? That your car starts more reliably when you're in a calm mood? That your computer crashes more often during stressful periods? While these observations might have conventional explanations, they might also hint at subtler interactions between consciousness and technology that we don't yet understand. Here's where our exploration takes us into territory that challenges not just our understanding of energy, but our understanding of the very nature of space and possibility itself. The quantum vacuum, which we've discussed as a source of unlimited energy, isn't just empty space filled with virtual particles. According to some interpretations of quantum field theory, it's a field of infinite potential, a realm where all possible states exist simultaneously until observation or measurement causes them to collapse into specific outcomes. This isn't mystical speculation, it's a mathematical description that emerges naturally from the equations of quantum mechanics. The vacuum state isn't actually empty, it's the quantum ground state that contains within it the potential for all possible excitations, all possible particles, all possible energy configurations. Dr. David Bohm, one of the most respected quantum physicists of the 20th century, described this as the implicate order, a hidden dimension of reality where everything is enfolded within everything else, where all possibilities exist simultaneously in potential form until they unfold into manifest reality through the process of observation and interaction. Now, here's what makes this relevant to allegedly suppressed technologies. If the quantum vacuum truly contains infinite potential, then accessing that potential might not require building complex machines. It might require learning to interface with the quantum field structure directly through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Some speculative interpretations suggest that consciousness itself might be a quantum field phenomenon, and that certain states of awareness might be able to influence the way potential unfolds into manifestation. This remains highly theoretical and lacks scientific consensus, but it offers a framework for understanding why consciousness factors seem to play a role in revolutionary energy technologies. The field of infinite potential isn't something out there that you need special equipment to access. According to this interpretation, you're immersed in it right now. Every thought, every decision, every moment of awareness occurs within this field of quantum possibility. The question isn't whether you have access to infinite potential. The question is whether you're aware of it and whether you know how to work with it consciously. Take a moment to sense this possibility. Notice the space around your body, the air you're breathing, the electromagnetic field generated by your nervous system. According to quantum field theory, all of this apparent emptiness is actually seething with potential energy, virtual particles, and quantum fluctuations that contain within them the seeds of every possible future. You're not separate from this field of infinite potential. You're an expression of it, a localized excitation in the quantum substrate that underlies all reality. And every moment you choose curiosity over certainty, possibility over limitation, you might be participating in the same process that revolutionary energy technologies attempt to harness mechanically. As suppression efforts have intensified over the decades, something unexpected has been happening in the underground network of energy researchers. Rather than being discouraged by institutional resistance, these communities have become more innovative, more collaborative, and more determined to develop breakthrough technologies outside conventional channels. The internet has transformed this dynamic completely. Researchers can now share detailed technical information instantly across global networks. Patents can be released into the public domain immediately upon filing, making them impossible to bury through corporate acquisition. Video demonstrations can be distributed worldwide before any suppression efforts can be mounted. But more importantly, these underground communities have developed new methodologies that go far beyond conventional engineering approaches. They've learned to integrate consciousness practices with technological development. They've created protocols for maintaining what they call coherent intention during experiments. They've developed support networks for inventors who experience suppression efforts. This represents a fundamental shift in how breakthrough technologies are developed. Instead of isolated inventors working in secret, there are now interconnected communities sharing knowledge, resources, and even consciousness practices designed to enhance their research effectiveness. Some of these researchers report that their most significant breakthroughs occur not during purely technical work, but during group meditations, synchronized breathing practices, or what they call coherent focus sessions, where multiple researchers concentrate their attention on specific technological challenges simultaneously. While there's no scientific consensus that group consciousness practices can influence technological outcomes, the consistent reports from multiple research communities suggest something interesting is occurring that deserves investigation rather than dismissal. The underground renaissance has also developed what they call open source consciousness, the idea that revolutionary technologies should be freely shared rather than hoarded or commercialized. This approach makes suppression much more difficult because the knowledge spreads too rapidly and widely to be contained through conventional control mechanisms. As you consider this phenomenon, notice how it might reflect broader changes in how human beings collaborate and share knowledge. The same internet technologies that enable global communication also enable new forms of collective intelligence that transcend traditional boundaries between individual and group awareness. Let's explore something that might be even more revolutionary than unlimited energy technology: the emergence of what some economists are calling consciousness-based economics, economic models that account for the role of awareness, intention, and collective coherence in creating value and solving problems. Traditional economics assumes that human beings are purely rational actors, motivated primarily by self-interest and material gain. But research in behavioral economics, neuroscience, and consciousness studies suggests that human motivation is far more complex and that collective outcomes often emerge from factors that conventional economic models don't measure or understand. When groups of people align around shared intentions and maintain coherent focus on specific outcomes, they seem to generate results that exceed what individual efforts could produce. This isn't just about teamwork or collaboration, it's about what some researchers call field effects, where the quality of collective consciousness creates conditions that influence physical outcomes. The HeartMath Institute has documented how groups practicing coherent breathing and heart-focused intention can measurably affect their local electromagnetic environment. While the mechanisms behind these effects remain unclear, the measurements are consistent and reproducible. Some speculative interpretations suggest that if consciousness plays any role in quantum measurement and the collapse of probability waves into definite outcomes, then groups maintaining coherent awareness might influence the probability distributions of events in their environment. This remains highly theoretical and lacks scientific consensus, but it offers a framework for understanding why consciousness-based approaches to problem-solving often produce unexpected results. Applied to energy technology development, this could mean that the most effective research teams aren't just technically competent, they're also coherent at the level of consciousness. They've learned to align their intentions, synchronize their awareness, and maintain what some call field coherence that enhances their ability to perceive subtle effects and develop innovative solutions. The economic implications are profound. If consciousness coherence enhances creative problem solving and technological innovation, then investing in consciousness development might be more economically valuable than investing in traditional research and development approaches. This suggests a future where organizations succeed not just through technical expertise and financial resources, but through their ability to cultivate collective consciousness, states that enhance innovation, creativity, and breakthrough discovery. As you reflect on this possibility, consider your own experience in groups where everyone was aligned around a common purpose and maintaining coherent focus. Notice how those experiences felt different from ordinary group activities, and whether you observed outcomes that seemed to exceed what individual efforts could have produced. Here's something fascinating that's been happening in recent years. The very mechanisms designed to suppress revolutionary energy technologies are beginning to work in reverse, actually accelerating their development and distribution rather than hindering them. Patent classification systems that were designed to hide breakthrough technologies are now being used by researchers to identify exactly which technologies are considered most threatening by established interests. When a patent is classified or suppressed, that becomes a signal to the underground research community that they're working in a promising direction. Corporate acquisition strategies that were designed to bury revolutionary technologies by purchasing and shelving them are now being countered by open source development approaches that make it impossible to control or suppress innovations through ownership. Academic ridicule that was designed to discredit revolutionary research is now being interpreted by many as confirmation that the work is significant enough to threaten established paradigms. Researchers have learned to view institutional resistance as a sign that they're onto something important. Even more significantly, suppression efforts have created what systems theorists call pressure points, areas where natural innovation is blocked, causing breakthrough discoveries to find alternative pathways that often prove more robust and creative than conventional development would have produced. The internet has made this reversal effect particularly powerful. Every attempt to suppress information about revolutionary energy technologies now generates more interest and wider distribution than would have occurred if the technologies had been left alone. This creates what some researchers call a suppression paradox. The more aggressively breakthrough technologies are suppressed, the more resilient and innovative they become, and the more likely they are to eventually emerge in forms that can't be controlled through conventional means. Some interpretations suggest that this reversal effect might reflect deeper principles of how information and innovation flow through complex systems. When natural pathways are blocked, alternative channels emerge that are often more creative and effective than the original pathways would have been. The consciousness factor plays a role here too. Suppression efforts seem to galvanize the research communities, creating higher levels of motivation, collaboration, and what some call coherent determination and problem-solving capabilities. As you consider that enhances their collective problem, this reversal dynamic, notice how it might apply to other areas of life, where resistance to change or innovation ultimately accelerates the very changes it's trying to prevent. Sometimes the strongest opposition to an idea becomes the force that ensures its eventual success. Let's explore an idea that might explain why breakthrough discoveries tend to become easier to replicate once they've been achieved anywhere in the world, and why suppressed technologies seem to resurface repeatedly despite systematic attempts to eliminate them. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake proposed what he calls morphic resonance, the hypothesis that when a pattern of organization or behavior occurs anywhere in nature, it becomes easier for similar patterns to occur elsewhere through a process of field resonance across space and time. While this remains a speculative concept that lacks scientific consensus, it offers an intriguing framework for understanding some puzzling aspects of technological development. Once Tesla demonstrated wireless power transmission, similar technologies began appearing independently around the world. Once Meyer developed his water fuel cell approach, comparable devices started emerging from multiple inventors who had no contact with Meyer's work. Applied to consciousness research, morphic resonance might suggest that when researchers anywhere in the world achieve breakthrough insights about the relationship between awareness and energy, those insights become more accessible to other researchers through field effects that transcend ordinary communication channels. This could explain why revolutionary energy technologies seem to be emerging simultaneously from multiple sources around the world, and why suppressing them in one location doesn't prevent their emergence elsewhere. The morphic patterns associated with these technologies might have achieved sufficient strength that they now tend to manifest spontaneously wherever conditions are favourable. Some interpretations extend this concept to suggest that collective human consciousness itself might be evolving toward greater awareness of energy possibilities, making breakthrough discoveries increasingly inevitable regardless of suppression efforts. The morphic resonance hypothesis also suggests that every time someone successfully replicates a suppressed technology, even in a small-scale demonstration, they strengthen the morphic field associated with that technology, making it easier for others to achieve similar results. This isn't proven science, but it offers a framework for understanding why breakthrough technologies seem to follow patterns that conventional models of innovation don't predict or explain. As you reflect on this possibility, consider your own experience with learning new skills or understanding new concepts. Have you noticed that some ideas seem to download into your awareness suddenly, as if they were already present in the field around you? Have you experienced moments when knowledge seemed to come from beyond your individual thinking? Take a breath here and imagine what it might mean if human consciousness is connected through field effects that allow insights and discoveries to spread through resonance rather than just through conventional communication. You might be participating in this process right now, simply by engaging with these ideas. In quantum physics, coherence refers to the degree to which quantum systems maintain synchronized phases in their wave functions. When quantum systems are coherent, they can produce effects like interference patterns and entanglement that seem impossible from a classical perspective. When they lose coherence, a process called decoherence, they begin to behave more like classical objects. Some speculative interpretations suggest that biological systems, including human brains, might maintain quantum coherence under certain conditions, and that this coherence might enhance perception, intuition, and the ability to detect subtle phenomena that classical analysis would miss. Researchers like Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness itself might depend on quantum processes in neural microtubules, and that different states of consciousness might correspond to different degrees of quantum coherence in brain activity. While these ideas remain highly controversial and lack scientific consensus, they offer a framework for understanding why consciousness factors seem to play a role in revolutionary energy research. If awareness involves quantum processes, then maintaining coherent states of consciousness might enhance the ability to perceive and work with quantum-level phenomena. This could explain why traditional scientific analysis sometimes fails to validate technologies that work consistently for their inventors. Classical measurement techniques might disrupt the quantum coherence required for the technologies to function properly. It might also explain why allegedly suppressed technologies often seem to work better for researchers who practice meditation, coherent breathing, or other consciousness development techniques. These practices might enhance quantum coherence in brain activity, making it easier to perceive and interact with subtle energy phenomena. The quantum coherence factor suggests that developing revolutionary energy technologies might require not just technical knowledge, but also consciousness development. The most effective researchers might be those who have learned to maintain coherent awareness states that enhance their ability to perceive quantum-level effects. As you consider this possibility, notice the quality of your own awareness right now. When your attention is scattered and reactive, how does that feel different from moments when your awareness is calm, focused, and coherent? These might not just be subjective states. They might correspond to different degrees of quantum coherence in your neural processes. This is speculative territory, and we must emphasize that there's no proven connection between meditation practices and quantum effects in the brain. But the possibility invites interesting questions about the relationship between consciousness development and scientific discovery. Throughout history, there have been moments when suppressed ideas suddenly erupted into mainstream awareness, despite all efforts to contain them. The printing press made it impossible to suppress written knowledge. The internet made it impossible to control information flow. We might be approaching a similar threshold with revolutionary energy technologies. The underground research network has grown too large and too interconnected to be suppressed through traditional means. The consciousness factor has introduced variables that conventional control systems can't predict or manage. The suppression reversal effect has turned resistance into acceleration. Some interpretations suggest that humanity might be approaching what could be called an energy emergence event, a moment when multiple revolutionary technologies surface simultaneously from different sources, making it impossible to suppress them all. This wouldn't happen through any single breakthrough or discovery. It would happen through the convergence of multiple factors: technical readiness, consciousness evolution, communication networks, economic pressure, and what some call evolutionary necessity. The species-level imperative to solve energy challenges before they become civilization-threatening crises. The threshold moment isn't something that happens to us. It's something we participate in creating through the quality of consciousness we bring to these challenges. Every moment you remain open to revolutionary possibilities, every instant you maintain coherent focus on solutions rather than problems, you contribute to the field conditions that make breakthrough discoveries more likely. You're not just a passive observer of these potential changes. You're an active participant in their emergence. The consciousness you bring to these ideas, the coherence you maintain while exploring them, the willingness you demonstrate to consider possibilities beyond conventional thinking, all of this contributes to the collective field that revolutionary technologies seem to emerge from. As you've engaged with these concepts today, you've become part of the consciousness network that's focused on solving humanity's energy challenges. You've contributed to the morphic field that makes breakthrough discoveries more accessible to researchers around the world. You've participated in the quantum coherence that might be necessary for revolutionary technologies to function effectively. The hidden energy secret ultimately isn't about suppressed devices or classified patents. It's about recognizing that consciousness itself is a form of energy, and that when consciousness networks align around solving global challenges, solutions emerge that no individual mind could have created alone. This consciousness network operates through field effects that transcend traditional boundaries between mind and matter, between individual and collective, between technology and awareness. It's a living system that's constantly evolving, constantly discovering new possibilities, constantly transcending the limitations that seemed absolute just moments before, and you're part of it right now. The quantum field of infinite potential that contains all possible energy solutions isn't something separate from you. It's the very medium in which your consciousness operates. Every coherent thought, every moment of clear intention, every instant of genuine curiosity opens pathways through which revolutionary insights can emerge. The threshold moment we're approaching isn't just about energy technology. It's about the emergence of a new form of human consciousness that's capable of solving challenges that seemed impossible from previous levels of awareness. It's about recognizing that the ultimate energy source isn't hidden in suppressed devices. It's present in the field of consciousness itself, waiting to be accessed by beings who have learned to maintain coherent awareness in the face of infinite possibility. As we delve deeper into this tapestry of hidden possibilities, let me share something that might fundamentally shift your understanding of how breakthrough discoveries actually unfold in our world. In 1953, a team of crystallographers at Cambridge University was struggling with what seemed like an impossible puzzle. The structure of DNA had resisted every attempt at analysis, despite years of careful X-ray crystallography work. Then something remarkable happened. Rosalind Franklin captured photograph 51, an X-ray diffraction image so clear and precise that it revealed the helical structure of DNA in a single moment of crystalline clarity. But here's what makes this story fascinating from our current perspective. Franklin had been taking similar photographs for months. The technique was the same, the equipment was identical, even her methodology remained constant. What changed wasn't the technology or the approach. What changed was something far more subtle: the quality of attention she brought to that particular moment, the precise alignment of factors that allowed a hidden pattern to suddenly become visible. It's as if the universe itself was waiting for exactly the right combination of technical skill and conscious awareness to reveal one of its deepest secrets. This pattern appears consistently throughout the history of scientific discovery. The breakthrough moments often occur not when new equipment is invented or new theories are proposed, but when existing tools and knowledge align with a particular quality of consciousness that allows previously invisible patterns to suddenly emerge into clear focus. As you consider this phenomenon, notice how it might apply to the revolutionary energy technologies we've been exploring. Perhaps these discoveries aren't being suppressed so much as they're waiting for the right alignment of technical capability and conscious awareness to crystallize into forms that can't be ignored or dismissed. let's explore something that researchers in the Underground Energy Network have been quietly documenting for decades, a phenomenon they call Coherence cascade, where breakthrough discoveries seem to trigger waves of similar insights across completely unconnected research teams around the world. When Tesla achieved his first successful wireless power transmission in Colorado Springs, something fascinating began happening in laboratories across Europe and Asia. Inventors who had never heard of Tesla's work began reporting similar phenomena. Marconi's wireless communication breakthroughs in Italy, Popov's radio experiments in Russia, and Bose's microwave research in India all occurred within a narrow window of time, each building on principles that seemed to arise spontaneously from the collective field of human investigation. Modern researchers working with revolutionary energy concepts report experiencing this cascade effect in real time. When one team achieves a breakthrough with resonant frequency manipulation, other teams working on completely different approaches begin reporting unexpected results that incorporate similar principles. It's as if successful discoveries create ripples in what some metaphorically describe as the field of human knowledge, making related insights more accessible to anyone working in adjacent areas. This remains a speculative interpretation, not a proven scientific phenomenon, but the pattern is documented extensively enough to deserve serious consideration. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic resonance offers one framework for understanding how this might occur, though his ideas remain controversial within mainstream science. The coherence cascade effect might explain why suppressing revolutionary energy technologies has proven so difficult over the decades. Even when specific inventors are silenced or their work is confiscated, the underlying insights seem to resurface through other researchers who had no direct contact with the original discoveries. Take a breath here and consider what this might mean for your own relationship with innovation and discovery. When you have an insight that feels like it came from somewhere beyond your individual thinking, when you experience what some call downloading of information that seems to arrive fully formed, you might be tapping into this same field of collective exploration that revolutionary technologies seem to emerge from. The consciousness factor appears to play a crucial role in accessing these cascade effects. Researchers report that their most significant breakthroughs often occur during states of what they call coherent receptivity, a quality of awareness that's simultaneously focused and open, technically informed, yet intuitively receptive. This suggests that developing revolutionary energy technologies might require not just technical expertise, but also cultivation of consciousness, states that enhance receptivity to insights emerging from the collective field of human investigation. As our understanding deepens, let's examine something that might surprise you about how suppression actually functions in the modern world. It's not the crude, heavy-handed censorship that we might imagine from spy movies or conspiracy theories. Instead, it operates through what systems analysts call a suppression ecosystem, a complex web of incentives, institutions, and social pressures that guide innovation away from certain directions without anyone necessarily intending to suppress anything. Consider how academic funding works in energy research. Universities depend on grants from government agencies and corporate sponsors who have existing investments in conventional energy infrastructure. Researchers who propose studies that might threaten these investments don't face direct censorship. They simply find it increasingly difficult to secure funding for their work. Graduate students observing this pattern naturally gravitate toward research topics that are more likely to be funded. Over time, Entire academic departments drift away from revolutionary approaches, not because anyone ordered them to do so, but because the ecosystem of incentives makes conventional research more viable for career development. The peer review process adds another layer to this ecosystem. Reviewers who have built their careers around conventional energy paradigms naturally view revolutionary claims with skepticism. Papers proposing breakthrough energy technologies face higher barriers to publication, not because of deliberate suppression, but because they challenge the foundational assumptions upon which reviewers' expertise is based. Corporate research and development follow similar patterns. Engineers and scientists working for energy companies are rewarded for developing incremental improvements to existing technologies. Proposals for revolutionary approaches that might obsolete entire product lines face natural resistance from management teams whose expertise and investment portfolios are built around current technologies. Patent systems contribute to this ecosystem through what lawyers call continuation strategies. When revolutionary energy patents are filed, they're often met with extensive challenges that can delay approval for years or decades. The inventors, lacking resources to fight prolonged legal battles, often abandon their applications or sell them to larger entities that shelve them indefinitely. What makes this ecosystem particularly effective is that no central authority needs to coordinate suppression efforts. The system maintains itself through the natural behavior of institutions protecting their existing investments and expertise. It's a form of distributed suppression that operates through economic incentives rather than direct control. As you reflect on this analysis, notice how it might apply to other areas where revolutionary ideas face resistance. Sometimes what appears to be deliberate suppression might actually be the natural behavior of complex systems protecting their existing patterns of organization. This understanding suggests that breakthrough technologies might emerge not through fighting the suppression ecosystem directly, but through developing alternative pathways that operate outside its influence entirely. Deep beneath the surface of conventional energy research, there exists what insiders call the resonance underground, a global network of researchers, inventors, and consciousness explorers who have developed methodologies that integrate technical innovation with awareness practices in ways that challenge every assumption about how breakthrough discoveries actually occur. This network operates through principles that mirror the quantum field effects we've been discussing. Information flows through it in nonlinear patterns. Insights emerge simultaneously in multiple locations without direct communication between researchers. Breakthroughs seem to arise from collective intelligence rather than individual genius. Dr. Kozyrev's work in the Soviet Union during the 1950s provides a fascinating example of how this underground network functions. While officially studying stellar astronomy, Kozyrev was secretly investigating what he called torsion fields, rotating energy patterns that seemed to carry information instantaneously across vast distances. His research was classified by Soviet authorities, but the principles he discovered continued to evolve through informal networks of researchers across Eastern Europe. When the Soviet Union collapsed and Kozyrev's work became partially declassified, researchers around the world discovered they had been investigating remarkably similar phenomena using completely different approaches. The resonance underground had preserved and developed these concepts through decades of apparent suppression. Modern members of this network report using consciousness practices alongside technical research in ways that enhance their ability to perceive subtle energy phenomena. group meditation sessions where researchers focus collectively on specific technological challenges, coherent breathing practices performed while conducting experiments, what some call field alignment techniques designed to optimize the consciousness technology interface. This integration of contemplative practices with scientific investigation remains controversial and lacks formal institutional support. But the consistent reports from multiple research communities suggest something interesting is occurring that deserves investigation rather than dismissal. The resonance underground has also developed what they call rapid propagation protocols, methods for sharing breakthrough discoveries instantly across global networks before any suppression efforts can be mounted. The moment a researcher achieves a significant result, the technical details are simultaneously uploaded to hundreds of mirror sites, transmitted through encrypted channels, and distributed to makerspaces and independent laboratories around the world. This distributed approach makes traditional suppression methods largely ineffective. There's no single point of control that can be targeted, no individual inventor who can be silenced, no central repository of information that can be confiscated. As you consider this phenomenon, notice how it reflects broader changes in how human beings collaborate and share knowledge. The same communication technologies that enable global commerce also enable new forms of collective intelligence that transcend traditional boundaries between individual and group awareness. Let's explore something that might fundamentally change how you understand the very nature of scientific breakthrough, the role that what researchers metaphorically call field dynamics play in determining when and how revolutionary discoveries emerge into collective human awareness. In physics, fields are invisible substrates that permeate space and give rise to forces and particles through their interactions. The electromagnetic field, the gravitational field, quantum fields, these aren't things in space, they are the medium through which space itself is structured and organized. Some speculative interpretations suggest that information and consciousness might operate through similar field dynamics, creating invisible substrates that influence how insights and discoveries flow through human awareness. This remains highly theoretical and lacks scientific consensus, but it offers an intriguing framework for understanding some puzzling aspects of how breakthrough technologies emerge. When researchers achieve significant insights while in states of coherent awareness, during meditation, deep focus, or what some call flow states, they might be accessing field dynamics that aren't available during ordinary analytical thinking. This could explain why revolutionary discoveries often emerge during moments of relaxed attention rather than intense effort. The field dynamics interpretation might also explain why breakthrough insights seem to arise simultaneously across multiple, unconnected researchers. If consciousness interfaces with underlying information fields that transcend individual minds, then significant discoveries might become accessible to anyone who achieves the appropriate state of awareness, regardless of their physical location or communication with other researchers. However, we must emphasize that this remains speculative territory without scientific validation. There's no proven mechanism by which consciousness could interface with information fields that exist independently of physical brains. These ideas should be understood as metaphorical frameworks rather than literal descriptions of how reality functions. Nevertheless, many researchers in the resonance underground report that their most significant breakthroughs occur when they are able to maintain what they call field coherence, a state of awareness that's simultaneously focused and receptive, technically informed yet intuitively open. Take a moment to consider your own experience with insight and discovery. Have you noticed that your best ideas often arise during states of relaxed attention rather than forced concentration? When you're walking in nature, taking a shower, or just before falling asleep, moments when your analytical mind is quiet but your awareness remains clear. These everyday experiences might offer glimpses into the same field dynamics that revolutionary energy researchers claim to access through their consciousness technology integration practices. As we continue our exploration, let's examine something that systems theorists call emergence thresholds, critical points where accumulated changes in a complex system suddenly produce qualitatively different behaviors that couldn't be predicted from understanding the system's individual components. Water molecules behaving individually follow predictable patterns. But when temperature and pressure reach specific thresholds, those same molecules suddenly organize into entirely different states, ice, steam, or plasma, with properties that emerge from collective behavior rather than individual molecular characteristics. Similar thresholds appear to operate in technological development. For decades, researchers investigated quantum mechanics as an abstract theoretical framework. Then, when computational power, materials science, and theoretical understanding reached critical thresholds simultaneously, and theoretical understanding reached critical theais, suddenly emerged as a practical possibility that's now attracting billions in investment funding. Some interpretations suggest that we might be approaching a similar emergence threshold for revolutionary energy technologies. The underground research network has grown beyond a certain critical mass. Consciousness technology integration practices have been refined and tested across multiple research communities. Communication technologies now enable instantaneous global coordination of discovery efforts. The suppression ecosystem that has contained these technologies for decades might be approaching its own threshold, a point where the distributed, networked nature of modern research makes traditional control mechanisms ineffective. This doesn't mean revolutionary energy technologies will suddenly appear through some magical process. It means that when technical capability, consciousness development, communication networks, and economic pressure align at critical thresholds, breakthroughs that seemed impossible for decades can emerge rapidly into practical application. The emergence threshold concept suggests that revolutionary changes don't happen gradually through incremental improvement. They happen suddenly when multiple factors reach critical alignment, producing transformations that seem almost instantaneous from the perspective of outside observers. As you reflect on this possibility, consider how emergence thresholds might apply to your own experience of learning and growth. Have you noticed that significant insights or skill developments often seem to happen suddenly, after long periods of apparently slow progress? These personal emergence thresholds might operate according to similar principles as the technological thresholds we're discussing. The consciousness factor appears particularly important in approaching emergence thresholds. Researchers report that maintaining coherent awareness while working with revolutionary technologies seems to accelerate the approach toward critical breakthrough points. This suggests that your own consciousness development might contribute to the collective approach toward energy emergence thresholds, even if you're not directly involved in technical research. Here's where our journey takes us into territory that challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between awareness and physical systems. Multiple research communities working on revolutionary energy technologies report that consciousness doesn't just observe these phenomena, it appears to catalyze them in ways that conventional science struggles to explain or predict. This isn't about mind over matter mysticism or reality manifestation claims. It's about subtle correlations between the quality of awareness researchers bring to their work and the consistency with which their technologies produce measurable effects. Dr. Dean Radin's work at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has documented statistically significant correlations between meditators' consciousness states and the behavior of random number generators, electronic devices that should be completely immune to mental influence, according to conventional physics. While the effects are small and the mechanisms remain mysterious, the statistical significance is robust across thousands of experimental sessions. Similar correlations appear in revolutionary energy research. Devices that work reliably for researchers who practice coherent breathing or meditation techniques often fail to function when operated by skeptical observers who maintain purely analytical mental states. This pattern is consistent enough across multiple research communities to suggest something interesting is occurring, even if we don't understand what that something might be. One speculative interpretation is that revolutionary energy technologies might be sensitive to extremely subtle environmental factors that correlate with consciousness states. Electromagnetic fields generated by coherent brain activity, minute vibrations caused by rhythmic breathing, or even quantum-level fluctuations that occur during focused awareness. Another possibility is that these technologies operate at the edge of quantum classical boundaries, where measurement effects play a larger role than conventional engineering assumes. If consciousness somehow influences quantum measurement processes, and this remains highly controversial with no scientific consensus, then awareness states might affect how quantum systems collapse into definite outcomes. However, we must emphasize that these remain speculative interpretations without proven mechanisms or scientific validation. The idea that consciousness directly influences physical systems at macroscopic scales lacks support from established physics and should be understood as exploratory hypothesis rather than established fact. Nevertheless, the consistent reports from multiple research communities suggest that the relationship between consciousness and revolutionary energy technologies deserves serious investigation rather than automatic dismissal. As you consider these possibilities, notice the quality of awareness you're bringing to this exploration right now. When your attention is scattered and reactive, how does that feel different from moments when your awareness is calm, focused, and coherently engaged? This difference in consciousness quality might not just be subjective experience, it might correspond to measurably different effects on sensitive systems in your environment, though the mechanisms behind such effects remain unknown. Let's examine one of the most profound puzzles in modern physics: why the universe appears to contain unlimited energy at the quantum level. Yet accessing that energy in practical ways remains one of the greatest challenges facing human civilization. Quantum field theory tells us that even empty space seethes with virtual particles constantly appearing and disappearing in time frames so brief they make nanoseconds feel like geological ages. The energy density of this quantum vacuum is so vast that a single cubic centimetre contains more energy than all the visible matter in the observable universe. This isn't speculative physics. It's a mathematical consequence of well-established quantum mechanical principles that have been confirmed through countless experiments. The Casimir effect demonstrates that virtual particles produce measurable forces between conducting plates. Hawking radiation shows that black holes emit energy by tapping into vacuum fluctuations at their event horizons. Yet somehow, despite being immersed in this ocean of infinite energy, human civilization remains dependent on burning fossil fuels, building nuclear reactors, and covering hillsides with solar panels to meet our relatively modest energy requirements. The paradox deepens when we consider that every atom in your body is held together by quantum field interactions that routinely handle energy densities trillions of times greater than anything our most advanced technologies can produce. Your biological systems operate through quantum-level processes that demonstrate perfect efficiency in energy conversion. Yet our mechanical attempts to harness similar processes remain crude and inefficient by comparison. Some interpretations suggest that the key to resolving this paradox might lie not in building more sophisticated machines, but in learning to interface with quantum field dynamics through mechanisms we don't yet understand. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, and this remains speculative, then developing awareness might be a necessary component of accessing vacuum energy practically. This could explain why revolutionary energy technologies often seem to work for researchers who integrate consciousness practices with their technical work, while failing when operated by purely mechanical approaches. The technologies might require what some call consciousness field coherence to function effectively. However, this remains highly theoretical territory without scientific consensus. The idea that consciousness could influence quantum field dynamics at macroscopic scales challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between mind and matter. Nevertheless, the infinite energy paradox suggests that our current approaches to energy technology might be missing something crucial about how energy actually functions at the deepest levels of physical reality. As you contemplate this paradox, notice that you're immersed in quantum fields right now. Every breath you take involves trillions of quantum interactions. Every thought you think emerges from quantum processes in neural microtubules. You're not separate from the infinite energy of the quantum vacuum. You're an expression of it. The question isn't whether unlimited energy is available. The question is whether we can learn to work with it consciously and coherently rather than trying to extract it through purely mechanical means. Let's consider something that might represent the most significant shift in human consciousness since the development of language itself, the emergence of what researchers quietly call coherent collective intelligence, a form of group awareness that transcends individual limitations and enables breakthrough discoveries that no single mind could achieve alone. This isn't about group thinking or collective decision-making in the conventional sense. It's about the possibility that when multiple conscious beings achieve coherent alignment around shared intentions, they might create field effects that enhance creativity, intuition, and the ability to perceive solutions to complex challenges. The HeartMath Institute has documented measurable changes in local electromagnetic fields when groups practice heart-focused coherence techniques together. While the mechanisms behind these effects remain unclear, the measurements are consistent and reproducible across different locations and research teams. Some speculative interpretations suggest that if consciousness involves quantum processes, then groups maintaining coherent awareness might create what physicists call entanglement networks, quantum correlations that enable information sharing and enhanced problem-solving capabilities that transcend ordinary communication channels. The Underground Energy Research Network seems to operate according to principles that mirror these theoretical quantum entanglement effects. Breakthrough insights emerge simultaneously across geographically separated research teams. Technical solutions appear through what researchers describe as collective downloading rather than individual invention. This remains highly speculative territory without scientific validation, but the consistent reports from multiple research communities suggest something interesting is occurring that deserves investigation rather than dismissal. The coherent revolution might explain why suppression efforts have become increasingly ineffective in recent years. When breakthrough discoveries emerge through coherent collective intelligence rather than individual genius, there's no single point of suppression that can contain them. The insights arise simultaneously across distributed networks that can't be controlled through conventional means. Applied to energy technology development, coherent collective intelligence might enable research breakthroughs that individual researchers, no matter how brilliant, couldn't achieve working in isolation. The most revolutionary discoveries might require the consciousness coherence of entire research communities rather than the technical expertise of individual inventors. As you reflect on this possibility, consider your own experience of group coherence. Have you participated in teams where everyone was aligned around a common purpose and maintaining focused attention together? Notice how those experiences felt different from ordinary group activities, and whether you observed outcomes that seemed to exceed what individual efforts could have produced. The coherent revolution suggests that developing consciousness might be just as important as developing technology in creating solutions to humanity's greatest challenges. When awareness becomes coherent at sufficient scale, breakthrough discoveries that seemed impossible from previous levels of consciousness begin to emerge naturally. This is speculative territory, but it points toward possibilities that could transform not just how we approach energy challenges, but how we understand the very nature of human potential and collective problem solving. Every revolutionary energy researcher we've encountered reports that their most significant breakthroughs occurred not through mechanical innovation, but through shifts in awareness that allowed them to perceive possibilities that had been invisible from their previous level of consciousness. Tesla's wireless power insights emerged during what he described as states of electrical harmony with natural forces. Mayer's water fuel concepts developed through what he called resonant awareness of molecular dynamics. The pattern is consistent. Breakthrough energy discoveries seem to require breakthrough consciousness states, not as a mystical requirement, but as a practical necessity for perceiving subtle phenomena that ordinary analytical thinking overlooks. This suggests that the ultimate energy revolution might not involve building better devices, but developing better awareness. When consciousness becomes coherent enough to interface directly with quantum field dynamics, external energy extraction technologies might become obsolete. The energy source we've been seeking through mechanical means might be accessible through consciousness means. However, this remains highly speculative territory without scientific validation. We must be careful not to confuse metaphorical possibilities with literal claims about how consciousness and energy interact. Nevertheless, the consistent reports from revolutionary energy researchers suggest that consciousness development and energy technology development might be more closely connected than conventional approaches assume. The quantum leap interpretation implies that humanity might be approaching a threshold where energy abundance becomes possible, not through technological innovation alone, but through consciousness evolution that enables direct interface with the unlimited energy of quantum fields. This doesn't mean abandoning technical research, but rather integrating consciousness development with technological development in ways that enhance both approaches simultaneously. The quantum leap isn't something that happens to humanity. It's something that happens through humanity, through the consciousness choices that each individual makes in each moment of their experience. You're not just a passive observer of potential energy revolutions. You're an active participant in their emergence through the quality of awareness you bring to these possibilities. The hidden energy secret ultimately isn't about suppressed technologies or classified patents. It's about recognizing that consciousness itself is the ultimate energy technology, and that developing awareness might be the key to accessing the unlimited power that quantum physics tells us exists in every cubic centimeter of space. This consciousness evolution is already happening through networks of researchers, inventors, and awareness explorers who are discovering that the boundary between mind and matter, between consciousness and energy, between individual and collective intelligence, might be far more fluid than conventional thinking assumes. As we approach the final movement of this symphony of hidden possibilities, something extraordinary begins to crystallize from everything we've explored together. The scattered fragments of suppressed technologies, underground networks, and consciousness matter interactions start to align into a pattern so elegant, so inevitable, that it feels less like discovery and more like remembering something we've always known but temporarily forgotten. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast crystalline lake in the early morning hours, when the water is so still it becomes a perfect mirror reflecting the sky. At first glance, you might think you're seeing two separate worlds, the one above and the one below. But as your perception shifts, you realize you're actually looking at a single, unified field of possibility, where heaven and earth meet in seamless reflection. This is what researchers in the deepest layers of consciousness energy exploration are beginning to glimpse. Not a world where mind influences matter through some mystical mechanism, but a reality where the very categories of mind and matter might be artificial divisions imposed by limited perception rather than fundamental truths about how existence actually organizes itself. The underground energy research networks we've been exploring may be documenting something far more profound than just suppressed technologies. They might be mapping the early stages of what some theoretical frameworks describe as a consciousness singularity, a point where human awareness evolves beyond its current limitations and begins to interface directly with the quantum field substrate that underlies all physical phenomena. However, we must emphasize this remains entirely speculative territory without scientific consensus or validation. These ideas should be understood as exploratory hypotheses rather than established facts about consciousness or quantum mechanics. Nevertheless, the consistent patterns emerging from multiple research communities suggest something fascinating is developing at the intersection of awareness practices and energy research that deserves serious investigation rather than immediate dismissal. Take a breath here and notice how these concepts feel as they settle into your awareness. Do they resonate with something you've sensed but never quite articulated? Or do they challenge assumptions that you've held about the nature of consciousness and physical reality? In the deepest archives of theoretical physics, there exists a concept that most mainstream scientists approach with a mixture of fascination and caution: the unified field theory, Einstein's lifelong quest to demonstrate that all fundamental forces are expressions of a single underlying field of reality. Einstein spent his final decades attempting to prove that electromagnetism and gravity weren't separate forces, but different aspects of a more fundamental field that unifies all physical phenomena. He never completed this work, but modern physics has continued the quest through string theory, quantum field theory, and other approaches that suggest reality might indeed be structured around a single, all-encompassing field of possibility. Some speculative interpretations extend this concept beyond physics into consciousness research, proposing that awareness itself might be another expression of this unified field. Not something separate from physical reality, but another way the same underlying substrate organizes itself into recognizable patterns. This interpretation remains highly controversial and lacks scientific consensus. There's no proven mechanism by which consciousness could be understood as a field phenomenon, and such ideas should be approached with appropriate skepticism. However, if consciousness were somehow connected to the unified field that theoretical physics seeks to understand, it might explain some of the puzzling correlations reported by researchers working at the intersection of awareness practices and energy technologies. The unified field recognition suggests that when human consciousness achieves sufficient coherence and stability, it might begin to interface more directly with the quantum field dynamics that govern physical phenomena, not through supernatural influence, but through resonance with field patterns that exist at scales and frequencies beyond ordinary sensory perception. This could explain why revolutionary energy technologies often seem to work better for researchers who integrate contemplative practices with their technical work. They might not be influencing the devices through mental power, but rather achieving states of awareness that allow them to perceive and work with subtle field dynamics that purely analytical approaches overlook. As you contemplate this possibility, notice the quality of your own awareness right now. When your attention becomes calm and coherent, when thoughts settle into stillness, and you rest in pure observing presence, what does that state feel like? Some interpretations might suggest you're experiencing direct contact with the unified field that underlies all phenomena, though this remains unproven speculation rather than established fact. Throughout our exploration, we've encountered multiple indications that humanity might be approaching what systems theorists call an emergence acceleration, a period where breakthrough discoveries and consciousness developments begin occurring at exponentially increasing rates, creating cascading effects that transform civilization far more rapidly than historical patterns would predict. The underground energy research networks aren't just growing in size, they're evolving in sophistication at unprecedented speed, communication technologies that enable instant global coordination of discovery efforts, consciousness practices that seem to enhance collective problem-solving capabilities, open source methodologies that make suppression through traditional control mechanisms increasingly ineffective. Some interpretations suggest these developments might be approaching critical mass where the accumulated momentum becomes unstoppable regardless of institutional resistance or economic pressures from established interests. The emergence acceleration concept draws parallels to other historical periods where multiple breakthrough discoveries occurred simultaneously across different fields, creating transformative changes that seemed almost miraculous from the perspective of previous generations. The scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the information revolution, each emerged through the convergence of technical capabilities, social conditions, and what some might describe as collective consciousness readiness for fundamental change. The secret has been hiding in plain sight all along, not in classified patents or underground laboratories, not in the machinations of shadowy corporations or government agencies, but in something far more accessible and far more profound. It's been hiding in the quality of attention you bring to each moment, in the coherence of awareness you maintain while engaging with impossibility, in your willingness to remain curious about realities that conventional thinking can't quite grasp. As you've journeyed with me through this landscape of suppressed technologies and hidden possibilities, something remarkable has been happening beneath the surface of our exploration. Every moment you chose to remain open rather than dismissive. Every instant you held space for ideas that challenge established paradigms. You've been participating in the very phenomenon we've been investigating, the emergence of breakthrough discoveries through consciousness networks that transcend individual limitations. The hidden energy secret isn't ultimately about devices or technologies that may or may not exist in classified vaults. It's about recognizing that you are already an energy being, swimming in oceans of quantum possibility, connected through field effects that science is only beginning to understand. The same quantum vacuum that contains unlimited energy also contains unlimited potential for human consciousness to evolve, to discover, to transcend the boundaries that once seemed absolute. Whether revolutionary energy technologies emerge from the underground networks tomorrow or decades from now, the real revolution is already happening. In the quality of awareness you bring to impossible questions, in your willingness to engage with mystery rather than demand immediate answers, in the recognition that consciousness itself might be the ultimate technology for accessing the infinite possibilities that surround us in every moment. The quantum decision that's already shaping your future isn't just about energy, it's about the evolution of human awareness itself, and how the choices you make at the deepest levels of consciousness are creating ripples through time that extend far beyond anything we've explored today.